Hey, what's up, friends? This is my buddy Greg.
What's up?
He's the mentor that got me into weed, and I wanted to pick his brain to ask him how to make guano tea, which should be a replacement for what is it? The flower big or
Grow big, yeah.
the grow big, which is used in the flower phase, and you use a lot of it. So I'm looking for an alternative to buying them, and this is just an attempt at replacing that. So I'm gonna pick his brain a little bit, ask him some questions about what he uses. And again, he grows in cocoa perlite, so he has a lot of experience with what works, what doesn't. So let's ask him a few questions to get started. All right, Greg. So I understand you make two different teas, one for a veg state, one for flower state. And these are the only two other things that you use aside from your guano boost teas, right? And the Tiger Bloom, Fox Farms, Grow Big, Fox Farms, these last forever. So once you get the booster in place, you really save a lot of money by not having to replace the other one very frequently. So can we get started and just give us an idea of how to make the veg tea that you use?
So what I'm going to use is Guano, the 731. It's the higher nitrogen. And typically I use about one tea a month, I would say. The main time I really like to do is once I start, like right after I top, is about the main time I will use the first month, and then the second month I'm going to use it pretty much like that week that you flip, right? When you go to flip your plants into flower, at that point you're going to want to use the guano tea. I'll also typically throw a banana peel in, and then you can either make a little hook to keep the banana peel close to the top, if you can keep it kind of all together. Otherwise you might have to do some fishing or straining out when you do it. I don't really like to strain, I like to just go all at it. So
Cool, so that's interesting. So you only use these booster teas twice for vegging, and aside from that, I guess you're doing the grow big every other watering, right?
yeah, now what you could typically do is you could replace the grow big with this. The only difference for me is it's just easier to dump a half a shot glass into however much, you figure out how much you're going to use based on how much water you're going to use for that feeding, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So this does take about 2 days. If you want to make this tea, it takes about 2 days. If you don't have a bubbler that is going to bubble and agitate it, then you'll have to go through and shake this 4 to 5 times a day.
Cool.
So for those 2 days, it's a lot more work versus obviously just putting this in.
Yeah, and these last forever, so I guess it does make sense to use these.
It does make sense to use these, for me, not for everyone. This is an all-natural fertilizer. So if you wanted to make a shift to an all-natural, then you would just also need to level out a couple things. You're not going to use it as often as you're going to use the Grow Big. But also this, it's a stabilizer is what I typically use it the most for. To stabilize after like topping, and then to stabilize for those first couple weeks of flower, because a lot of people don't know that you need to still continue with veg food for that first week to 2 weeks of flower, and when you do something like this, it just gives it that initial boost of that nitrogen. So.
And so this is, I guess this is a bit stronger than like these formulas would be, right? When
It's
you're
a
doing
tiny bit stronger in nitrogen, but it's got less phosphorus, and then it's got less potash as well. So.
And then after feeding, you only do it twice for vegging, you said, and then twice for flowering, right?
Probably about twice. Probably about the fourth week of flower, and then probably somewhere about like the 6th, and then I'll do a couple teaspoons of molasses, and then probably another banana for flower as well.
Okay.
I like to really incorporate the molasses in once I'm flowering.
And then after you feed with your tea, do you just flush out the next watering with water, just like
I typically go food, water. So
okay,
yeah.
so it's just like a regular feeding.
Mm-hmm.
It's just maybe a little more potent.
A little higher. So
okay.
You may go a second water after a tea like this, depending on what all you do put into your tea. So if you see that you do start to get like some sort of burned edges, or you start to see some signs of like maybe a little nitrogen burn in that second week, then you might want to just go a second flush, or if you still see it's like super lush, go another week of water.
Cool.
But it's not always necessary.
All right. So can you maybe just walk us through how you would make one of these teas? And so the teas again, they're very similar to veg and flower teas. The main difference is the different guamos that you use, right?
Yeah, this guano is a high nitrogen. The other one is a high phosphorus.
Okay, so the first number, that's the nitrogen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and the second is the
phosphorus, and then the one is 1% potash.
Okay, yeah, so it's 7% nitrogen, 3% phosphate, 1%
Potash.
Potash.
Yep.
Whatever that is. But then, okay, cool. So that's not a huge difference. So yeah, so can you walk us through like how much water you have in here and like what you would be adding to make? Because right now we only have the ingredients for the veg tea. But
yeah, I'm going with about 2 gallons of water right now.
Okay, 2 gallons. So that's the standard that you go with for both teas.
No, just right now because I am only running 2 plants that I just put into flower. And honestly, now that you mention it, I might just put a little bit more because I have one that I'm trying to save it. So let me just fill this up a little bit more. Because I have a second plant, or a plant that's like a mother that I was gonna give up on, but since we're doing a tea right now anyways, I'm gonna give it a little tea also.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're just making it based on how many plants you're gonna feed, and you're gonna do a gallon per plant, as we normally do for most like 3-gallon containers, for example.
Yeah, because I have 2. I believe I have 2. My flowering plants are in 5-gallon right now, so I'm gonna give them probably about a gallon each of full water, and then
so
I'll use
one
that
gallon?
other half-gallon-ish for the. I think right now there should be about 2.5 gallons in this.
Okay, cool.
So I'm planning this out based on 1 gallon for each of those, and then about a half a gallon for the.
And then these bad guamos, they usually have instructions also to kind of guide you how much you should be using, right? Per gallon and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So it'll tell you right on here to use 1 to 2 tablespoons per gallon.
Okay,
So
cool.
I'm actually gonna go probably about 3.5 tablespoons total right now, because I don't want it to be too strong. If you have like a real bad yellowing situation going on, or you have something that maybe you neglected a little bit and you want to get it into tip-top shape before you go back into, before you flip it into flour. Or typically the main thing is I run out of room in my veg tent, and my the stuff that goes into veg doesn't typically look as good as it should when I first put it into the flower tent. So I will typically run another week or 2 under my flowering lights in veg, and then I'll do like a tea like this to just make sure that they are in tip-top shape before I even flip them to flower.
Okay.
So it just depends. It's situational, just like every.
For sure, a lot of this is kind of as you go, you get better, right? There's a learning curve, right? But just trying to simplify it for the beginners, and for myself, I'm also a beginner to this guama, and that's kind of, what I'm realizing is, this is for sure more work, because this formula, for example, it doesn't last, right? There's no preservatives, so you want to use it after you make it, you wait 2 days, then you use it. So I think that's one thing that kind of
you'll need to shake it. You want to keep it open air. If you have a aquarium tube, I mean they're $5. Everyone should have one for either cloning or some other random thing that you're doing anyways. But
$5 for the stuff we're spending, it makes sense.
If you put an air bubbler in there, then you don't have to shake it every every few hours or whatever.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna take all this stuff and try to make my own. I'll make another video. But yeah, this is the OG. This is the guy that taught me from the start. So he's always been successful, and all our methods are all different. There's a lot of preferences. But for sure,
that's how
try it this way first.
You're just do your own thing, and we'll find. We gotta cut that.
Somebody's hungry.
So basically, it's all preference. You know, you find out what works for you, and
All right, so again to reiterate, so these guano teas, I always thought there was a lot of worm castings involved, and you do sometimes use worm castings, but you mentioned for the way that we're growing in cocoa perlite, it's closer to hydro, so the worm castings are not as relevant as they would be in soil. So even without the worm castings, this is still a good booster tea, and you can get away without using them. But we still like
this
to use
is
them.
this is where the actual nitrogen and the phosphates and potash come from. They don't come from the worm castings.
Right,
So-
right. So this is where the magic happens, and after this, you said you might add a banana, wait a couple days, agitate it, and then that's it, pretty much, right?
Yeah,
Then you
I would typically add a banana.
48 hours.
More for flowering, so that's why I'm not too concerned with adding a banana right now. I usually do that more in the flowering stage.
Right.
So this pretty much, I mean, it's good to go now. The only difference between it being less work would be if you had the air bubbler, whereas I'm gonna have to go through and just shake this probably 3 to 4 times a day, which isn't bad. You know, you just walk by it when you're walking in and out of that area.
Awesome.
Quick
Well,
and
that's,
easy.
that's pretty simple. I'm definitely gonna try out this method within a week or two, because yeah, I'm trying to move away from. I'm trying to just be able to use these two.
So if you're gonna move away from these, you just need to probably find a little phosphate and potash
No, sorry,
substitute.
I want to keep these, so I want to just use these because these last forever. So, you know, for ease of use, I still recommend everybody use these. But I'm trying to move away from Big Bloom, right? Which is these usually come in a trio. Big Bloom always goes within 2 weeks, and these last for months.
And if you wanted
You
to
know,
make
so-
your own big bloom, you don't have to let the worm casting sit for as long, but I still do, and you can still make a big bloom type of thing. It would still be the same. You would just use a lot less of the backwater. Like you would probably end up using a teaspoon of the back guano.
Or you were also saying if you got a different back guano that has more phosphorus, right?
Yeah, so that's a different. That's going to be you're going to use that one in flour, just
In
like
flour,
you'll use
yeah.
this in veg and this one in flour.
Yeah, because that's kind of the main. Because yeah, Big Bloom right now, all I'm doing is using Big Bloom for flowering, and for vegging right now, all I've actually been using is nitrogen. So it's interesting that you're also using this booster for vegging. I might give it a try as well. But I think my main attempt at using these teas was to replace the Big Bloom, just because that one, I feel like I'm using a gallon every like month or something.
I don't
Because,
ever use it.
Yeah.
I used it in the beginning, and I noticed more from using an occasional worm casting tea, and not using it every single. On the bottle, they say use it every single.
Right, every other
feeding.
But you're saying that this one, every other is good enough from what you've seen and
Oh yeah,
stuff
for flour,
well,
for
Okay, cool.
supplements. That's the main thing with the worm castings. That's the way to get away from Big Bloom is literally just by worm casting.
But the guano is the main thing, even for flowering, right? The worm castings are just like a little extra.
Yeah, the worm castings are like they're more designed for soil. So
Right.
since we're not really using soil, we don't really have to use it.
Okay, so it's more of an optional thing that, well, yeah, the big thing is the Big Bloom does say worm castings on the ingredients, but it's hard to know what process they're using. It says organic, but it never goes bad, so something fishy is going on there. So I'm glad I'm moving closer to the organic side, and yeah, I appreciate all the info, Greg.
Yeah, no problem.
And yeah, this is my buddy Greg. He's out in Globe. He might be making his own videos one of these days. He's an actor, so yeah, thanks for checking out the video. I'm gonna make my own tea and show you how that's working. And yeah, looking at his plants, I'm sure they'll work out really well. So thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Stop. Thanks, bud.